The Kawasaki Ninja 500. The teacher that we all made fun of, but only wanted the absolute best for us. The friend that everyone ignored, but in reality was the friend that everyone truly needed. Where men chose humble beginnings, boys let their pride get the best of them and said, "Get a real bike." The Ninja 500 provides what I believe is the perfect entrance to the world of motorcycles, and specifically the world of Japanese sport bikes. As a beginner myself, the choices for a first motorcycle can be vast and intimidating. First, having to decide which genre of bike you want, as if you're choosing your class in an RPG video game. Next, you have to research which brands are going to be reliable. Should I go new, used? Not to mention that CCs are like a gateway drug being passed around at a high school party where all the popular kids are peer pressuring you into doing something you aren't really comfortable with. All because they're just trying to be cool, right? Realistically speaking, if you're buying a motorcycle to be cool or look cool, you're buying a motorcycle for the wrong reason. And my experience with my Ninja 500 is a testimony to that claim, because the amount of friends I've made or girls I've impressed after my 5 months of ownership is a whopping 0. However, what I have come to realize in my 5 months of ownership is that a motorcycle is not just a persona. It's not just a way of transportation. It's a leap of faith, a trust fall where you can only rely on God and yourself to be the one to catch you. It's a way of reflecting and learning about oneself and the actions that you'll find yourself willing to make when you put yourself in such a vulnerable situation. You feel so invincible, yet fragile, all at the same time. You lick your teeth and your gums just to remind yourself of what you're made out of while going speeds that the human body was never designed to go. All on a machine that's not much bigger than you. It's empowering, frightening, freeing, but limiting. A great man once said, "Do you have the power to say no to power?" The Ninja 500 is for the man that has that power. Starting with the looks, the Ninja has aggressive and sharp styling, which in comparison to the competition, I think is not as good as the Yamaha, but better than the Honda. The engine, the Ninja is powered by a liquid-cooled 451cc dual overhead cam parallel twin that creates 51 horsepower at 10,000 RPM and 31 foot-pounds of torque at 7,500 RPM. This is the biggest difference from its predecessor, the Ninja 400, where the exact same engine is used. However, the stroke of the combustion chamber on the 500 is 6.8 millimeters longer, giving the engine more torque across the rev range in order for better street riding capabilities, but it does sacrifice maximum RPMs. This engine also has an 11.3 to 1 compression ratio, so high octane fuel is recommended. The power is being translated through a 6-speed manual transmission with 14 teeth on the front sprocket and 43 teeth on the rear sprocket. Some recommend switching the rear to a 41-tooth sprocket in order to maintain higher speeds on the freeway. The tires are the Dunlop GPR 300s. These tires are okay, but if you keep this bike long enough to change the tires, you definitely won't get them again. For the comfort and positioning on this bike, if you want a better idea of the comfort and fatigue, I'll link my 100-mile trip video in the description, but here's a basic rundown of how it feels. Alright, so positioning. Let's see, make sure I'm not messing anything up. Okay, so as you can see, decently aggressive triangle, not so aggressive like a ZX4 or like any crazy super sport like that, but not so upright that it would be considered a sport tour. It's really not bad. As you can see, I mean, I'm 6'1", and I fit on the bike decently, but it's still just a little bit small for me. The seat height is 30.9 inches, and my inseam is either 33 or 34, but as you can see, I mean, I can flat foot this thing fine, and a little bit of bend in my knees as well. So, I mean, you know, if your inseam's around that area, you'll have no problem. This bike is very controllable for me. You know, I don't feel like it's like I'm gonna lose handle of it when it's at a dead stop. Now, one complaint I do have about it is if you look at the seat, it is
slanted a little bit, which is obviously, you know, for performance riding. But I do notice that when if you have the, you know, certain pairs of pants on that are a little bit baggy, have a little bit of play to them, basically as you're riding this, as you're hitting bumps and just riding it in general, you'll slide more and more forward on the seat and your pants will stay in the spot that you were originally at. Gives a bit of a nutcracker effect. And every once in a while at a stoplight, you gotta, you know, do the old stand up and, you know, rub your pants back down and sit back down, and then you're ready to go. But overall, not bad. Long distance, it gets a little bit tiring and more fatigued, but if you want a better explanation of all that, I'll link my 100-mile video in the description.
The Ninja 500 rides like a moped after it hit puberty. It's about twice the weight and has a similar stock exhaust note. Its parallel twin vibrates the whole bike, also kind of similar to when you ride a jet ski. At first, I thought the vibration made it feel kind of cheap, but this was before I understood that it's just the nature of having two cylinders firing side by side on a 180-degree crankshaft. In fact, it actually starts to feel kind of cool, especially when you blip the throttle during higher RPM downshifts. The whole bike will vibrate, and the exhaust has a harmony of loud pops and bangs. It's definitely a highlight every time I ride the bike. The bike handles very well, and honestly, it was pretty much the main selling point of why I bought the bike. I just didn't want to start on something where I didn't feel confident making tight or evasive maneuvers, either in large or small spaces at either high or low speeds. It's super easy to ride. I just feel like if you were to ride a bicycle, like if you know how to ride a bicycle and you have decent experience on a bicycle, despite, you know, controlling power on the road, I do think you could easily ride one of these as long as you have good clutch control. And especially compared to other cruiser bikes that I've ridden, you know, especially when they start to exceed 600, 700 pounds, it just feels like any incline or decline on the road is enough to throw you off the bike at a low speed. Not to mention the low speed cornering on something so heavy. The gearing feels really good. All the gears are predictable. Nothing feels wrongfully engineered. The 43 tooth sprocket does leave you at pretty high RPMs on the freeway, and I definitely would be pretty excited to try something with a little less teeth, see how that compares. Comfort and positioning, I mean, I've obviously gone over this in other videos and just a little bit before this. You know, I've noticed some back pain on rides going longer than an hour, which may be attributed to my size, as I am about 6 feet tall, 6'1", between 6'1" to 6'2" to be exact, and I'm not going to put that to the test. But if you're between 5 and 6 feet about, you'll probably fit pretty perfectly on this thing. And while my size may not be perfect for this bike, I do think my weight at 170 pounds is an area where I think this bike takes good care. I haven't adjusted the suspension, but one of the first things I did notice when I hopped on this bike for the first time is how effortlessly this bike is at riding over bumps and obstacles, especially on these Michigan roads, going over railroads and potholes. It just, at least in my perception, it handled it very well and still does to this day. In fact, it handles so well that I feel like I have the option to choose to stand if I want. I don't have to stand if I don't want to. I do a lot of the times anyways, but usually the suspension handles all those bumps and stuff pretty well. Controls and gauges, it's another area to admire in my personal opinion. It's very straightforward, very purpose-built. I have the base model display, however I actually prefer it compared to the screen display on the SE models. I think the digital display is just a little bit better aesthetically, and the LCD screen one, I think it just kind of looks like an eyesore. I just don't like the colors they use on there. I've compiled 5 pros and 5 cons. So my 5 pros: plenty of power for beginners, but not too much. You may say that the portage was just right. It's incredible value. Some of the best value that you can get out of a brand new bike. It has ABS, which I honestly think is a good idea for beginners, at least for myself. I definitely like having ABS. It's simple, it's analog, it's cable throttle, no quick shift, and basic gauges. It just gets you good at the fundamentals of riding a bike. And finally, it's easy to work on. It's a bike that you're going to get familiar with, not just this bike itself, but all bikes in general. It'll be pretty universal. My 5 cons, most people will most likely outgrow this bike. My second one is the stock exhaust is pretty quiet and sounds very similar to a moped. If you've ever been next to like a smaller 50cc moped or anything like that, you'll notice with the stock exhaust, the big fat one that it comes with, it's just very, very quiet. And I thought it sounded quite similar, as I've said before in other videos. But third con, stock tires are not great. They're just not the best. I don't have too much experience on bikes and stuff like that, but I have noticed, when you're going over tar snakes and stuff like that, they do tend to slip a little bit. But they're okay. They're fine. Another con is these bikes have a sticky clutch, and if I'm not mistaken, it might be a recall. So, this con may not really count. But it may be a recall, so it might not be on newer models. But basically, when you pull in the clutch and you go to make an upshift, it'll take a little bit for the clutch to disengage. So you'll let off the clutch, and it'll like halfway disengage, but then there's like another chunk that it has to disengage, and it'll just kind of feel a little bit jerky. So not ideal, but what I will say is it only happens like maybe 15 to 25% of the time, depending on the ride, but it doesn't really happen that often. And my final con is just not a great long distance bike, but at the end of the day, that might not be what you're looking for. You might just be looking for something to have fun with on the weekends, or just drive through town while, having some fun with some speed and some handling. So once again, maybe that con won't apply to everyone. But in conclusion, as a beginner to the world of motorcycles, having 6 years of two-wheel traffic experience on a 49cc moped, the Ninja 500 has seriously exceeded my expectations and has left me feeling like I finally made a correct decision on a personal purchase. The Ninja 500 just seems like it is an entry-level experience that cannot be beat. You learn the fundamentals on a bike that is not heavily assisted. You have the reassurance of ABS, and the power is not so much where you're going to throw yourself off the bike or go to jail. It's also not too little where you're going to get bored and feel like you immediately need to sell the bike to get something bigger. Besides the riding experience, the bike allows you to get familiar with the engineering and maintenance that comes with these machines. With that being said, the Ninja 500 is a bike that I don't see myself selling, not just because of the sentimental value of it being my first bike, but because it's a bike I can always hop on to practice the fundamentals and push to the limits. That concludes the video. It truly does mean a lot if you've made it to the end of the video. I've been kind of experimenting on different ways I want to, format this channel, and just trying to think of ways where I can have content that's not just a Ninja 500. The amount of times I've said Ninja 500 on YouTube is kind of insane, especially for, how I've only had my channel for a couple months. I do have some cool stuff planned for the future. It's just a matter of time and money and waiting for things to happen. But for the time being, I am very grateful for the support that I've gotten thus far. Appreciate all the love in the comments. And we've also recently hit 100 subscribers. It's pretty sweet. I don't know what we're going to be at by the time I post this, but I really do appreciate it. Besides that, just be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Peace.